is much to grieve about. Be with those who are hurting throughout this world. Each are precious to you. Help us, O Lord, to be guided by your Spirit as together we seek to serve. We pray it all in the name of the head of the church, our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. At this time, we will turn it over to our friends at Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, and grateful for the several different presentations that are being planned.
Thank you, Bruce, and good evening and good afternoon, everyone. One of PDA's folks is actually from the West Coast as well, living not that far from Heidi Worthen Gamble. Hi, Heidi. Miles Markham, you're gonna hear from him a little bit later, but he is also based on the West Coast. I'm the director of Presbyterian Disaster Assistance for the last 10 years, and particularly grateful to be with you all, as if I were still in the parish, I would have been the furthest south in Florida, dealing with rising seas and more intense hurricanes. And my congregation, because of that and many things, was the first Earth Care congregation in the state of Florida many years ago when this program started. So it's a little bit like coming home for me, and I'm grateful that our congregation, Riviera Presbyterian Church in Miami, continues with its commitment and membership with all of you. PDA, which I'm going to call Presbyterian Disaster Assistance from now on, has a double mandate. First, we are mandated by the General Assembly to care with and for communities adversely affected by crisis and catastrophe in the US and overseas. That means we are responding to natural disasters, semi-natural disasters like climate change-oriented disasters, industrial and other human-caused disasters such as the Flint water crisis, and work that we're currently doing with communities, standing with communities that were poisoned by ethylene oxide. Those are both earth care kinds of issues, though not climate issues. And also we respond to human-caused disaster by showing up in communities that are affected by mass violence events here in the US. And then, of course, international natural disaster. And we are also engaged with unnatural disaster, as Bruce kindly noted in the chat and prayed. We are initiating a response in Ukraine, and actually in the process of getting money out the door to partners in Ukraine and also on the borders of Ukraine who are receiving refugees even as we speak. So that also means that in addition to disasters of war and disasters of natural and semi-natural nature, we are the Emergency and Refugee Program of the PCUSA. So our core budget is supported by One Great Hour of Sharing, whose season we are now in. And so I want to thank you all for your participation in One Great Hour of Sharing, and just lift up that the work we do in all of these things is a part of that. Maybe you'll move the next, there we go. So as you may or may not know, our General Assembly a few years ago adopted Matthew 25 as an invitation and a vision, and the Presbyterian Mission Agency, of which PDA is a part, has made that the center of our work, which essentially means that our work is focused around the alleviation of poverty, the addressing of systemic racism and the eradication of it, and supporting congregational vitality, which we do in PDA in a number of ways. This has been an easy fit for PDA. All of our grants, all of our work in communities afflicted by disaster, both here in the US and overseas, is oriented and focused on communities that have been either historically or circumstantially excluded from resources. Anyone who's ever been through a disaster knows that at the end of a disaster cycle, it is the people who are the least able to recover on their own who are left out, and who very much need the support of the communities of faith and other NGO communities that work together and gather together after an adverse event. We're working to end systemic racism by really trying to address more clearly the impact of systemic racism and structural racism and historic exclusions on communities of color and indigenous communities, as they have been left out of many disaster response tables. They have been unable to access the same kinds of resources as others, particularly when communities of poverty and communities that are communities of color intersect. The impact is even more serious. For us, congregational vitality is really core to the way we work in the US. We have volunteers, we have hosting sites that maybe some of you are aware of. I know Jeannie Shaw is, where we work together with communities that are in disaster sites, congregations who want to host neighbors to help repair the lives and the homes of their own neighbors. And we link congregations and work teams with them in order to get them an opportunity to learn from another community and to show up and sort of be the love and the saving presence of Christ. This year, our PMA is taking to General Assembly a mandate and a budget that also includes explicitly in our Matthew 25 invitation, addressing climate change, addressing the impact of militarism, and addressing gender discrimination, both with LGBTQIA folk and where women are excluded, which happens a lot in the international disaster response community, particularly, as well, of course, as here at home. In PDA, climate change has become much, much more a part of how we're looking at disaster over the last few years. We are aware that disasters are happening out of season. We are aware that disasters are much worse than they used to be. They are much more intense. They are much more frequent. Jim is going to talk about that in a minute or so, but just two examples: the tornadoes that hit our own state of Kentucky and neighboring states, Illinois, Tennessee, Missouri, all happened in December, which is not typically tornado season for us. The intensification and the rapid formation of hurricanes is another issue. And right now in Madagascar and Malawi and Mozambique, they have been hit by back-to-back very serious and intense typhoons. Again, out of season, much worse than usual, definitely an impact of climate change and causing massive catastrophic flooding and displacement for a lot of folks as well. Militarism, I guess we really don't need to talk about because we're in the midst of Ukraine, so I think we know that. And I think just the next slide, Jim. Or maybe not. Jim, we're going to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Lori. And thank you, Bruce and others, for giving us this opportunity to be with you this evening. And I've been involved with disaster ministry, oh, good Lord, 20 plus years. And I have to confess that in the beginning years, there was climate change over here and there were disasters over there, and never the twain shall meet. There wasn't a lot of intersectionality. But I can't go to anything anymore in terms of disaster preparedness, response, and not hear of the intersectionality between climate change and disasters. Bruce, thank you for setting that up in the beginning comments, that the two are certainly, they certainly go hand in hand. And it doesn't take a scientist, although this is done by a scientist, to realize what's happening. This information, or this graph, came from NOAA, and it shows over the last, not only the last decades, but the last century or so, that the climate, the atmosphere is getting warmer. And there's very real consequences of a warmer climate. And you can see the amount in which it's increasing. And here's, if that's the cause, this is the effect. Also a slide from NOAA. And you'll notice that in 2021, there were $20 billion weather and climate disasters around the country. And you can see a sampling of where some of those took place. And 2021 was not a record year. It was second only to 2020, when there were $21 billion weather disasters. And over the last 10 years, the U.S. has experienced 115 climate and weather disasters in excess of $1 billion in damage. And that's over twice as much as the previous decade. So you can see the trend in a warming climate and the trend in more impactful, more numerous, more devastating disasters. And I found this when I was doing my research to prepare. The majority of disasters in 2021 shared something in common. They were the result of natural variability or randomness, but made worse by the effect of climate change and societal and socioeconomic trends. So as Lori mentioned, hurricanes still hit Florida, fires still hit the West, tornadoes through Tornado Alley, but they're more intense and the effects are much more devastating. One climatologist explained it this way: if a community typically got 50 inches of rain over the course of the year, they still may get 50 inches of rain over the course of the year, but instead of having that spread over 10 storms, it may come in 2 or 3 storms. And you know what happens when it rains a lot and the infrastructure of the ground is not prepared to deal with it. And it's estimated that 1/3 of all US homes, or 35 million homes, are at high risk of natural disaster. And as we know, people have power, and that's both a blessing and a curse. As I think on this call, we certainly all would agree, people have the power to change or alter the climate. And one of the ways is because of the way we live. The climate is getting warmer, or the atmosphere is getting warmer. The climate in areas is changing, and the weather patterns are changing. Droughts are getting more severe, rain events more severe, hurricanes intensify at the drop of a hat, and people have the power to affect the climate in very adverse and destructive ways. But we're here, and as a sign of hope, that people have power to do something about it. The best thing we can do is to have the power to change the cause, to lower our carbon footprint, to live in more green and sustainable ways, to do things that at the very least can reverse, if not eliminate, the impact that human beings have on the climate. And there's a lot of great work that's been done and continues to be done. One of the ways that we deal with climate change and disaster is with the effects, the symptoms of the change. We're talking a lot more about mitigation. In other words, when we do come in and we have the resources to bring to bear, that we're not just making things the way they were, because most likely the way things were for a lot of people was not that good on a good day, but to mitigate so that we can reduce the loss of life and property and lessen the impact. So a lot of the conversations that we have at the PDA level, a lot of the conversations we have within the disaster preparedness and response community is how can we do things differently so that the impacts of the change to our climate will not be so devastating and severe for the people who call this home. One example I'd like to lift up is from the Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group. This is a group that was formed along the Coastal Bend area of Texas primarily, the eastern coastal portions of Texas. And interestingly enough, they had been in existence for many, many years. And they actually were meeting, I believe it was in early August or July of 2017, to celebrate the good work they had done over the last couple of years and disbanded as a group, just about the time that Harvey paid a visit along the eastern coast of Texas. And so fortunately, they were already in existence and they simply just ramped up and then focused on how to recover from Hurricane Harvey. And they did a lot of great work in a lot of great places, but there's one project in particular that I'd like to highlight, and that's Terra de Esperanza, Land of Hope, Place of Hope. And so they worked with a lot of partners, faith-based partners, voluntary organization partners, governmental partners, to do something different. So this is what many homes look like throughout the Woodsboro area in Texas. They simply were not built to withstand the winds and the rains that came from Harvey and that continue to come because of the changes in the climate. And so instead of just putting a new roof on this house, or instead of just building a home in the same area, they were able to get ownership of a piece of property where they could build 23 brand new homes for 23 brand new people. And they're able to mitigate in terms of the infrastructure. And they were also able to work with engineers so that the homes were built to higher specifications, so that if they weren't impervious to the winds, they were much more resistant to the winds and to the flooding. And you can see the homes in construction. And those of you who may know construction techniques can already see things that are being done to mitigate the wind and the rains. And this was actually the dedication of the very first portion of this project, Terra de Esperanza, Land of Hope. So it really, when push comes to shove, when we talk about all the techniques and all the interventions and all the things we can do, it really is about people. And so I'd like to introduce you to a couple of families that benefited from this project. This is Jessica and Jameson Mitchell and one of their two boys. And they were in one of those homes that was completely destroyed. And now they own a home that is built to withstand the rains and the winds that can come in that part of Texas. This is Lauren Collins and her children, Kylie, Kayla, and Caleb. And now this family owns a home where they can be safe from the winds and the rains. And this is Jeremy Lewis and his family. And so they went from a home that would leak on a good day to owning a home where they can live safely and securely, knowing that they have a place to call a refuge and a home. This is a number of, these are the groups that participated in this project. You see Presbyterian Disaster Assistance about 2/3 of the way down. You can involve volunteer organizations, faith-based and governmental partners. It's been said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'm sure many of us can remember the smile on our face when we signed the paperwork to take ownership of a home that we felt secure and good about. And I'll finish with this slide. I enjoy this one. At the end of the day, Terra de Esperanza became a happy place for 23 families, adults, and children. And it's really interesting that when they talked about these homes, they talked about them as being forever homes, because in this part of Texas, many of the homes do not get sold and people move in and move out, but they get passed on to family for generation upon generation. And so these, because of the way they're constructed, because of our efforts together, are forever homes for these families, their children, and their children's children. Edwin?
Thank you, Jim. My name is Edwin Gonzalez Castillo, originally from Puerto Rico, and I'm the Associate for Disaster Recovery for Latin America and the Caribbean for Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all and be able to share about this important topic and needed topic of conversation, like was mentioned at the beginning in the video. I want to share with you my outtake on this conversation when we talk about climate change. There was a research many years ago that compared humanity dealing with climate change with the story, and I'm pretty sure you have heard about it, about the frog in the pot. And it's the story that says that if you put a frog in hot water, it would jump immediately because it gets scared of the hot water. But if you put the frog there with cold water and you start to increase the heat on the water, the frog will stay there and will not notice that it's changing temperature until it's too late and it will die. So research believes that that is what is happening also here in the world, in our world. Temperature are increasing, changes are happening, but the changes are so slow or the numbers seem so insignificant for people that they don't notice those changes, and probably it will happen too late. Working in Latin America and the Caribbean is a challenge. It's a challenge because of the many situations that we are seeing, the many disasters that are happening, like similar to what Jim mentioned. All is related, all is connected in some ways. Latin America, based on information from the WMO, Latin America and the Caribbean regions experience intense drought, tropical storms, severe heat wave, heavy rainfall, devastating hurricanes, catastrophic wildfires, all in the Amazon in 1 year. In the same year, even same communities, they went from having droughts, severe droughts, to having rain that devastated the community, devastated the crops, all in the same year. And that is a challenge. While some communities are maybe fighting against the issues of wildfire, other communities are fighting excessive water, excessive rains that bringing rivers and bringing down mountains on top of houses. So those are some of the challenges that communities are facing. In 2020, for example, was among the 3 warmest years on record in Central America and the Caribbean, and the 2nd warmest year in South America. And those have many challenges in the communities and the people in economically, socially, that we're going to be talking about for a while. You saw the image from Jim later before about the increase in temperature. This is an image of the one on the right is 1921. The one now is 2021. And see the changes in temperatures based on this thermometric measures. What that means for communities is more flooding, more rains, more hurricanes, events like El Nino and La Nina that affects their crops, their food security, and many other things. And for people in the Caribbean, for example, where you have 14.5 of the residents who live in the Caribbean live near coastal zones and less than 10 meters above sea level. In Latin America, that's 27% of the population live near coastal areas. And when you have conversations about the water increasing and the sea increasing, that creates a big problem for communities that do not have the means to move from their areas, that the government is not providing options for them to be able to find another homes. We have seen that in Puerto Rico, where we see areas that before had long beaches with a long space of sand, and now they're right in front of the houses and affecting the people who live there. Communities that are real poor and communities that have money are all facing the same issues. And of course, the big disasters like hurricanes. I started my job in PDA. I won't say thanks, but because of Hurricane Maria. I was a pastor in Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria hit, and the amount of damage that it created was never seen before, especially for that generation, or for our generation. This is a different hurricane, but just so you can see the amount of damage that a hurricane can create in the Caribbean. This is the picture on the top. It's before a hurricane. The picture on the bottom is right after the hurricane. Imagine living there. I remember that when Hurricane Maria happened, it seems like an atomic bomb had fell. It had burned everything. There was no tree. There was nothing that was green. And for us, that we are not accustomed to the changes in seasons, not seeing anything green around us was depressing. This is an image of Irma. If you remember Hurricane Irma that affected also the United States. It was followed right after by Maria, and those both hurricanes has affected the Caribbean in many ways Just a few weeks ago, PDA approved a grant for the Dominican Republic that had to deal with construction of houses that were devastated by Hurricane Maria. So the damages are still there. Just because we don't see it on the news, just because we don't see it outside in other places, doesn't mean it's not happening or it's not there anymore. The other issue that we have been dealing with in PDA is immigration due to climate change. Hurricanes like Eta and Iota, droughts and floodings in many places in the Caribbean has increased the amount of people that have to leave their homes, looking for a better place. So a lot of the people that are coming now to the United States or going to Mexico or even internal migration is due to the changes in climate, because they don't have a place that they can grow their food, they don't have a place to work. Fishermen who, because of the contamination, the pollution, cannot fish in the same place that their previous generations could fish. That is affecting many communities, and it's increasing the amount of people that have to leave their homes in order to look for a better life. The problem is that it's not one of those things accepted when they're trying to enter a place and say, hey, the reason that I'm a refugee is because of global warming. That's not in the list, but it's a reality that we see more and more happening in Latin America and also in the Caribbean. One of the things that we have learned is extreme weather events affected over 8 million people across Central America. It worsened the issue of food insecurity in countries already crippled by economic shocks, COVID-19 restrictions, and conflict. This here is an image of the changes that is going to happen in Latin America, that are expected to happen in Latin America in the next few years. This is by 2050. What color is that? Oh my God, I forgot it in English. Morado. Oh my God. If you don't know Spanish, I'm sorry. It's called morado in Spanish. That color represents the damages in crops that the area in the Latin America is going to suffer by 2050, and the effects of climate change and the temperatures going up. Of course, that affects also us, because a lot of the food that we have, corn, maize, and other things, also come from Latin America and the Caribbean. And this is another picture of that same change and the effects that that's going to have on crop yield, especially on maize in 2050. The one on the left is from 2010. The estimate is that by 2050, all those brown places where their crops are going to disappear because of climate change. That means that less people have access to food. That means that communities and towns that were already facing food insecurity are going to face even worse food insecurity. And that's part of the projects that PDA have been involved in response to the climate change and to the situation that many communities are facing. That image that you see right there is from Guatemala, where a community called POPNOC, a program called POPNOC, has provided work to people who have been returning from the United States, being sent back from the United States and Mexico, and go back to Guatemala to a community called Huehuetenango, and do not have means to leave. They have even more debt now because they have been sent back, and they had already loans to be able to leave the country, and now are returning without any means. So PopNut has worked with communities on teaching them how to do different type of agriculture that will sustain even situations of drought and flooding. This is another example of the way that PDA has also worked. This is in Bolivia, a community that was facing an enormous drought and didn't have access to water because the government didn't have access to that town, or really didn't care about that town. And they didn't have potable water systems installed in that community, so they didn't have access to water. And PDA was able to provide grants for them to install a system that will get water from a near river and water connection that was a few miles away. Of course, the results of hurricanes have affected the Caribbean and Latin America in many ways, especially Central America, which receives hurricanes from both sides. And PDA has been able to provide assistance in many ways. One of those ways that we really is amazing, I have seen it firsthand, the work is from our volunteers in PDA that have served in Puerto Rico. For example, after Hurricane Maria, we opened 5 host sites to receive volunteers. Thousands and thousands of volunteers from the United States continental came to Puerto Rico to help rebuild homes and houses. People from all ages stayed in our host sites and partnered with our partner groups to work in providing assistance to communities in the island. One amazing project, and I want to mention this because we love this project, is in Vieques. Vieques is a small municipality island in Puerto Rico, and it's on the east side of the island. And this organization, Vieques Historical and Conservative Trust, reach out to PDA and say, hey, we want to provide a resilient hub that when a hurricane happens again, we're able to provide assistance to the community. We're able to provide solar energy, we're able to provide water, and we're able to provide communications, because those in a small island, inside a small island, is an even worse situation. And we work with this organization and establish a hub, resilience hub in one side of the island. They already had one in the south, and they wanted to have one in the center of the small island of Vieques, and we were able to help initiate that. And they're providing classes and teaching opportunities and resilience trainings and mitigation trainings to the community. One of those you see on the left is a mangrove project that they are working from that place that helps the island be more resilient to hurricanes and mitigate the effects of the climate change. In other places like in India, Nigeria, and many places in the rest of the world, PDA is also working with partners that are providing assistance with food security and projects and resilience and helping the communities affected by global change. We're thankful always for the donations and the help from our communities and our churches that understand the needs to work together, like Jim said, to go further. That is all from my side, and I will pass it now to our dear friend and colleague, Miles Martin. I'll put the video in a minute from Mark. Give me 1 second. And Mark is going to talk about an amazing also ministry from PDA that we also enjoy sharing with our partners.
Hi, I'm Miles Markham.
Oh.
I use he, him, or they, them
Great.
pronouns.
Give me 1
I
second.
am a mission specialist for Presbyterian disaster assistance. I'm here today just to share a little blurb.
One of those things that
Story
happen with
Ministry,
technology.
which is a nonfiction film.
Would you like Casey to show it?
Do you have Casey? Do you have the video?
I do.
Oh, perfect.
Just 1 second here.
The good thing of having backup. That's part of the PDA. And if not, I also found it here. Casey.
Hi, I'm Miles Markham. I use he, him, or they, them pronouns, and I am a mission specialist for Presbyterian disaster assistance. I'm here today just to share a little blurb about Story Ministry, which is a nonfiction film team that we have within PDA. Story Ministry covers a wide range of issues, both social and environmental, And you can find all of those different titles on our website, pcusa.org/PDA, and under our Active Responses tab. What I'm most eager to share with you is that all of these are free and they are open for congregations and communities to use to accompany any kind of advocacy or campaign work you're doing that are related to the topics that might be featured in the short or feature-length films. We also have study guides available to you, and we also offer additional consulting or supporting. Again, all of this free of charge. It is well within the heart and intention behind why PDA supports this work. And so the best way to set up a call or to get a screening going, whether that's virtual or in person, is just to shoot us an email. You can find that on the website too, but if it's easier, you can just reach out to me, miles.markham@pcusa.org. And again, however we can be of assistance to you, we are excited and we are eager. So please do connect with us, and we can share more about the different films and the ways that we've seen them used in different communities to catalyze change for them. Thanks.
Okay, I think Jane is up next. Unmute.
Hello, I am Jane Laping. I am now the Vice Moderator of Presbyterians for Earth Care. Some of you may recognize my name because I served as coordinator of Presbyterians for Earth Care for 6 years, and you probably got a few emails from me during that time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch over to Presbyterians for Earth Care resources. And Bruce will be talking about individual changes that people can make to have an impact on caring for our creation. Those individual changes or individual actions are important, but to have an even bigger impact, it's better to work at your church level or at the presbytery level. So I'm going to be sharing my screen and showing you what Presbyterians for Earth Care has on our website that can help you either to start a Presbyterian Earth Care team or an Earth Care team in your church. So this is the Presbyterians for Earth Care homepage on our website, presbyearthcare.org. And where I'm going to show you is in this tab here called Resources. And if we just scroll down to the second item, you'll see that's labeled Presbyterian Earth Care Teams. So I'm going to take you there. And this is something that you may want to do. It's kind of high level because you're not working at a church level. You're working with your presbytery, and so you're working with all the churches in the presbytery. But what I want to show you on this particular page is the directory of resources, because this contains a lot of links, a lot of films, a lot of documents, a lot of good information that you can share with your church. So the first part of this is just goes through the goals of how to set up a Presbyterian Earth Care team. So we're just going to go down here to where it says additional resources. And look at that. The first thing we come to is Earth Care congregations. And I know that some of you are probably part of Earth Care congregations, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We will get back to that in a few minutes. But the things I want to show you are all the different things that you can do, the different varieties. So here are some resources on Earth Care advocacy, starting off with the Office of Public Witness. That is definitely one of the portions of our church that we don't know a whole lot about. but they can be very helpful in terms of helping us learn how to advocate. There's a great little video right here that talks about how an overture is passed at General Assembly. I invite you all to watch that, and I'll give you these links. And then there's just, here are more videos under Earth Care information. And then Earth Care guides for action are like even from other denominations. It's Moving Forward guide from Blessed Tomorrow, Creation Justice Ministries. So we're sharing other people's resources as well as our own. And then we get down here to the Earth Care spiritual resources, and there's some really interesting things here. Dr. Janet Adair Hansen gave us a webinar on creation care worship, and this is her handout. A good way to get creation care into your church is through worship. And there's some sample worship services in here. Lenten devotionals from Presbyterian Earth Care, which is out now. And we also do an Advent devotional. And then there's Earth Care supported by science. And this is the National Climate Assessment, which we've been hearing about, but this probably needs to be updated. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll go back here and we'll take a look. We'll go back to this resources tab, and this time we'll go to church Earth Care teams. So again, this is a guide that goes through steps to take to start an Earth Care team at your church if you don't already have one. But we are also going to skip that for now, and we're going to move down here to the guide itself. Now this is a download, and I should be able to download this to show you how this works. Okay, so I clicked on it and my download shows up here at the bottom of my screen, and I'm going to open that. That's not what I was hoping to see. There we go. So here's the guide. And again, it's set up pretty much like the Presbyterian Earth Care team is, where it goes through these steps of how to start an Earth Care team in your church. So we'll skip through all that, and then we'll get down here to the resources and references. There are other denominations that also have information about starting a green team, the Episcopals, UCC, some interdenominational groups. And look at this, how timely, ideas on how to celebrate Earth Day at your church. So I'm sure all of you will want to have a look at that. And then another really nice video, a music video here. And here we are back at Earth Care congregation. So this is the last thing I want to show you. And again, this is a download. So it's going to take us here to the Presbyterian on the PCUSA page, and we're going to download this document. All right, boy, my computer's working well today. Okay, here we are. See if I can get that to go away. There you go. So this is another document that we're going to kind of skip through here. It's got some it has 10 pages of resources. So you don't even need to be thinking about becoming an Earth Care congregation if you're not already one. You should just have a look at all the resources that they have here, 10 pages worth. Okay, here we go. Examples and resources. So the way Earth Care congregations works is that there are 4 areas that are part of the certification process. So that's worship, education, facilities, and outreach. So these resources are divided up by those 4 categories. Yeah, so we start with worship. Here we go again, Earth Day Sunday from Creation Justice Ministries. Blessing of the Animal Service. garden blessing, hymns about the environment. And I know that Carolyn Gillette is in here somewhere. Scripture readings, sermons again, and then just general things, eco palms. Okay, all kinds of stuff. And then education is another one.
Jane, I don't think people are seeing what you're talking about, just to let you know.
Really? Why is that?
They're seeing the PCUSA page for describing Earth Care congregations, but not the actual document.
Well, thanks, Bruce. I do have it open, so I will stop this and see if I can share again with the other document.
So
I think you have to share your whole desktop rather than just one window.
you need to highlight the one you want to share and then do share screen. But when you hit share screen, you want to be able to show the one you want to highlight.
Can you see it now?
We can see Education Committee.
Good. Okay, good. This is the document that I was seeing that you were not. Yeah, so under education, vacation Bible school curriculum. Have you ever looked for any of that on God's creation? There are some resources for you. Books for your library, sustainable lifestyle choices, something from the Presbyterian Hunger Program here. This is a great series, Just Living. Taking too long here. So anyway, this gives you a good idea of other resources that you can access. Here are more resources on facilities. A lot of this stuff you probably have already heard of, but great things, just as reminders of what you can do. If you have any question about what you can do, just look here and you'll get overwhelmed probably. And then should be a section also here on outreach. There we go. Advocacy, sustainable practices, all kinds of good stuff. All right. Yeah, so like Catherine Hayhoe said in the video, if you were able to watch that before the webinar started, facilitate sharing of resources, and that's what we're trying to do to meet our mission of connecting, equipping, and inspiring people. Okay, Bruce, over to you.
There we go. So I will try to be quick here. I'm going to just highlight a few different things I saved on my computer. One of the little bits I wanted to show you was this article from the Washington Post just a few weeks ago. A real estate evaluating company did an evaluation, and 1 in 10 homes in the United States were impacted by weather disasters. If you look at the bottom of the screen, that's 14.5 million homes last year. Property damage estimated to be $56 billion, almost $57 billion. So climate change related disasters, severe weather disasters are impacting literally 10% of the population in this country. There's a variety of things we can be doing, as you've heard about. Let me share probably the best organization for good and wide, diverse kind of things to look at is the one that's called the Project Drawdown. And they have a very good website, Project Drawdown. And I'll just scroll down. They've got this little nice online course on climate solutions. And then you look here, they have it in-depth articles on every level, looking at electricity, transportation, land, coastal issues, building, agriculture, you name it, all kinds of in-depth, very helpful information from the beginning level to the very simple level. So that is well worth it. The other one that I wanted to show you to illustrate how this is truly impacting is a USA and News Report article that showed that here in the United States, well, actually, I'm sorry, Lancet, the British medical journal, had this report that we are now estimated to have 5 million people extra deaths related to climate change on an annual basis. When we look at other disasters going on in the world, they are a fraction of what is being impacted already. And as a couple of our speakers pointed out, too often the people being impacted are the ones that we don't see making the newspapers. They are often folks in countries that don't get the news coverage. They are people of color. There are all kinds of folks. There's issues of environmental racism, and there's a good article about some of those concerns raised in the Presbyterian Church's national website. The News Service most recent article today has a discussion, a panel discussion that was taking place on that just today. And there is a copy of that video that is available that you can tap into and make good use of. I got a lot of things I could share, but I also want people to have an opportunity to ask questions, because sometimes the best things we can do are be able to let other people give us their input. But let me just, Jane took you a quick run through the PEC website. Let me share with you real quick our Facebook page, because that's the stuff that gets current very quickly. And let me just show you a few things there. We try to keep it updated. Here's what you all are at. This is a wonderful illustration from NOAA that looks at how climate change impacts communities of color, disproportionately as well, older adults, low-income communities, and children, all more than the general population get illustrated. Here's an interesting article from the Church of Scotland about a church there that did some amazing environmental things. Here is an article posted by Katherine Hayhole, who's one of the top climate scientists out there, very good in explaining things. And she links to an AP article that explains the latest IPCC article, the latest report, over a 3,000 page document, I believe. And this is a good AP summary of it. It just got released a few days ago, and the news is not good, but it is news we need to pay attention to. Our friends at Presbyterian Hunger would like me, I'm sure, to highlight this annual resource, Tread Lightly for Lent, daily ideas to nurture us in the faith and nurture us in action on addressing concerns for economic justice, for climate change, for disaster release, all kinds of wonderful ideas. It's a free download off the PCUSA website. This is a resource that Jane alluded to. The Presbyterians for Disaster Assistance has a Lenten devotional guide, and this one was for Ash Wednesday. And this year it's beautifully illustrated by photographs by Roy Howard, and a variety of writers have contributed to it. That's a download from Here's a couple of articles on the IPCC, the New York Times one. Here's the Guardian one. This is something we're trying for the first time this year, is a weekly Bible study looking at the lectionary. People from all over the country joined us this past Tuesday. It'll be every Tuesday at 11 o'clock East Coast time from 11 to noon. And it's a chance to people to reflect on the lectionary text from a perspective of creation care. And everybody's invited to come for one or more Tuesdays. Here's again the devotional I was mentioning. We try to post articles. This is a good one from our ecumenical partners at Creation Justice Ministry, World Council of Churches, looking at the finance issues and divestment. Another major study that looked at the problem of growing global forest fires. All kinds of good things, well worth your attention. So check out the Facebook page for Presbyterians for Earth Care. Now I'd like to let us be open to some questions. We have, I think, close to 80 people here, so it's going to be challenging for Casey. If you want your attention, I believe if you raise your hand on the at the chat, at the bottom of the page there's reactions in the far bottom of the Zoom, reactions, and hit raise your hand, then you will come up to the top of the screen and Casey can easily see you and call upon you. So you've heard from a variety of wonderful speakers. please raise your hand if you'd like to say something. I see Lori's making a comment in the chat, which is very helpful. Jane is actually, I'm sorry. Several people are. Look at the chat, everybody. There's excellent things in the chat worth your attention. I do appreciate Lori making the point that one great hour sharing that many of our churches take during Lent. Part of it goes to Presbyterian disaster assistance. And obviously they're concerned about issues of the environment, Presbyterian hunger program, the environmental justice, all of that benefits from encouraging our church members to support one great hour sharing. And one of the reasons we did this webinar now is we've started the season of Lent, and this video will be posted on YouTube in just a handful of days. You can share it with individuals in your church. You can share it for a small group or a clip of it in a worship service with the idea that encouraging people to watch the whole thing. Are there questions or comments? Please raise your hand and we'll be happy to call on you, or Casey can highlight you. I think we just solved climate change and all the problems of disaster relief because I have no questions here, Lori. Lori, go ahead.
Oh, hey, Bruce. This is Peter Cook from New York State Council Churches.
Hello, Peter.
Are you, where in the Presbyterian group or your Earth Care are you guys doing an analysis of current federal legislation that's either been enacted or proposed? And I was curious if you had any thoughts on where we are with the Build Back Better climate provisions at this point.
I don't think we are where we should be. I think normally within the structure of the Presbyterian Church, we have what's called the Office of Public Witness, used to be called the Washington Office. They're based in Washington, 110 Maryland Avenue, and they have to juggle all the legislation facing us. We also look to a variety of ecumenical organizations to guide us on advocacy in relation to national legislation. Biden's proposals in Build Back Better are ones we really should be organizing around, and frankly, most environmental groups have not done enough on them. And really, the communities in West Virginia and in Arizona in particular could be working more on a couple of senators there that could make a key difference in the passage of legislation. We still have work to do, and if we can't do it in one lump piece of legislation, maybe some can be accomplished incrementally. I see Mr. Olson there. Natalie, what would you have to share with us? I think you're muted. If you could unmute, please.
You mentioned Catherine Hayhoe, and I just saw something this afternoon, and I didn't recall the date of it, but Austin Seminary is doing a program with her online sometime in the next few weeks. So if you want to look at the Austin Seminary website, I've heard her several times. We had her at Westminster, and she did a Westminster Town Hall Forum, and she has a very good perspective. She comes from a perspective of an evangelical Christian, but her perspective is such that she is very critical of many of the evangelicals in terms of their stance on climate change.
I am putting into the chat the link to the Austin event. So Austin, in case folks don't know, is our Presbyterian seminary in Texas, and they are inviting this. She actually is in Texas as well. So hopefully they don't have to pay airfare. It may be Zoom, but be well worth listening to her. Other questions or comments, especially for the presenters? Well, I know some people don't want to be recorded, so I suggest this. Casey, why don't you stop the recording after I thank everyone, and then we will give people an opportunity, those who can stay around, to ask and contribute things with not having to worry about being recorded and posted on YouTube. So let me formally thank all those who participated. It really was what I was hoping it would be, a sharing of wonderful stories. The church is making a difference, and we still obviously have a lot more to do, and we need all the support we can get. So thank you for being part of this. We will save the chat, which had all kinds of wonderful suggestions in it as well, and that will be posted along with the recording on YouTube sometime in the next few days. And if you registered for this event so that we do have your email address, we will be doing a special email to everyone to give you the link to the video. And we hope it will be a useful resource, and we hope we can have another one of these conversations, because obviously we need to be continuing to work on this. So for now, I will say thank you. God bless you. And Casey, if you could, we give you thanks, Casey, for